Hi, I'm Tyler Augst, and I'm a Government and Community Vitality Educator with Michigan State University Extension. And I'm here at Public Media Network today to talk a little bit about the City of Kalamazoo's government and some of the types of government in Michigan. So, what is a township in Michigan? Townships are really our basic building block of local government. They initially got their boundaries as part of the surveys done under the Northwest Ordinance back in the 1700s, before Michigan was even a state. The idea with these townships, borrowing from New England, is it would be a local government very close to the people, thinking where you could travel in a day during that time. And these townships were marked out square blocks all across the state. There are really two types: general law and charter townships. Each get their legal authority from our state, Michigan, through two different sources. We have a state statute that talks about the general townships, and then one that talks about charter townships. The state, through those statutes that establish townships, says that they need to do a couple of things. They're required to do property assessments, collect taxes, and administer elections at the local level. They do a lot of other things that the residents want them to do, elected leaders decide to do, things like planning and zoning, public safety, maintaining cemeteries. All of those are additional things going back to those three key responsibilities of the assessments, collecting taxes, and running elections. And all of this is governed by a township board elected by the residents. The township supervisor is often seen as the face of the township. They are the one who is leading the meetings that the township board is holding. They're the legal agent for the township. They have some important key roles like appointing folks to some commissions, helping to prepare the budget, calling meetings, and really leading those meetings as the township board comes together at their public meetings. Next key role is the township treasurer. Treasurers have some key roles relating to, as you might imagine, the money. So they're the ones who are going to collect the taxes for the township. They're the ones who are going to keep the accounts for the township, the money coming in and going out. They also may invest some of the township funds, find ways to grow that money, and other things related to kind of those coffers of the township. Another key role in the township is that of the township clerk, and this is kind of the record keeper for your township. They maintain all those township records and make sure they get passed along to the next group of elected officials. They're also the one who may be sending out the checks for the township. They're in charge of the meeting minutes, that important role to document what's actually decided at our townships. They also run the local elections. So they're the ones in charge of your electronic poll book and voter registration and making sure those elections run smoothly whenever they're set to happen. And then the final elected role in townships are what are called trustees. And for general law townships, you can have either 2 or 4 trustees. Again, it's a local choice by the township. Think of these as the local legislators. These are the folks who are going to be part of that township board, part of the deliberations towards policy decisions, whatever needs to be decided. By statute, they should be voting on all issues that come before them. They're responsible for the financial health of the township along with their fellow board members, that supervisor, treasurer, and clerk. So these township trustees should be attending all of their meetings, preparing for them, studying the issues, and then that great phrase, other duties as assigned. There may be local ordinances or policies or things that establish other duties to some of these positions, like a trustee that they may be in charge of, like maintaining the cemetery or serving on the planning commission. And last, but of course not least, what about township staff? Townships can hire staff to help them carry out their business, do the work of the government. An assessor, a police chief, a fire chief, deputies for the clerk or supervisor or treasurer. Townships can also hire a manager, and this manager can kind of handle the day-to-day operations of a township and any duties that are delegated to them by one of the elected officials of their township board. So then, what is a charter township? Charter townships are a slightly different type of government that was created in 1947 to really give growing townships a little more authority, streamline some of their administration, and build in some protections against annexation by neighboring cities that we were starting to see around the state. So these charter townships generally have all the same powers as a general law township, and then those that are also outlined in what's called the Charter Township Act here in Michigan. Key differences between a general law township and a charter township. Charter township authorizes the local unit to appoint a township manager or a superintendent and gives some additional taxing authority to that charter township. And like I said, it also has some of those additional protections from annexation. Generally here we see the same roles as on a general law township board. Supervisor, treasurer, clerk, trustees, and then the staff. Key differences between some of those roles with the supervisor. The charter township, a supervisor has more authority for the day-to-day operations than they would in a general law township. A key difference though is when it comes to trustees. A charter township must by law have 4 trustees, whereas that was a choice for our general law townships to have either the 2 or the 4 there in that position. The charter townships have the ability to appoint or hire what's called a superintendent. And this township superintendent can have a whole list of duties that are outlined in our state laws delegated to them by the township board. The idea here being these growing townships might need a professional person to come in and manage outside of the elected body. So you can bring in a township superintendent who has experience with running municipal organizations to really handle the day-to-day operations of the organization. And generally these folks become residents of the township and take over a lot of responsibilities that maybe a township supervisor would have in charter townships. The manager similarly can take on a whole host of duties with the written consent of the elected officials. Charter townships can hire any other staff that they deem appropriate or needed to fulfill their governmental mission, things like the assessor, police chief, parks and rec staff, whatever the local community is seen as a need. And so that summarizes broadly what the different roles are in townships and the differences between general law and charter townships here in Michigan. Of course, there's going to be local nuance. I always encourage you to contact your local township if you have those specific questions. The Michigan Township Association is a great resource for more information about our townships to see exactly how things are done in your little section of Michigan.